Thank you, Jeff, and thank you all for coming to this luncheon. And my wife and I thank you very much. And before I get started, let's give one more round of applause to my amazing running mate, Dr. Joe Jorgensen. So folks, I know I said at my speech earlier that I didn't have a speech. This time I actually don't have a speech, but I do have something I want to talk about, something that's very near and dear to my heart. What actually caused me to retire from the company that I owned for the better part of 20 years so I could focus full-time on Libertarian message. The fact that right now, in order for us to be able to actually start winning big elections, for Joe and I to get elected to the White House, for us to win congressional and Senate races and many more down-ballot races as well, we have to change the cultural conversation in this country. We see it every single day. The political conversation that happens in dining room tables and in restaurants and in places around the country is really usually just arguments between two groups of people over how much bigger government should be, how much more control it should have in our lives, how much more power it should have, and how much less we should have. And I want to move it towards a conversation about how much smaller government should be, how much more power we should have, how we'd be able to thrive if we didn't have to worry about the boot on the neck of the people that we have with the Republicans and Democrats and what they've done in government. And so to that end, for the last several years, I have been working on just that. And what I've learned in doing my messaging is largely what I had learned in the time that I was working in communication with my company. And it's this. When we are to reach people, we have to reach them where they are, not just in their spaces, but from their precepts. Jeff was talking about it, finding common ground. My good friend Scott Horton likes to say all the time, we are better than the left on the things that the left cares about. We are better than the right on the things that the right cares about. And for that matter, we're better than the center and the centrists and the moderates on the things they care about. The difference is our ideas actually work. What a concept. And so to that end, we often, I think often libertarians believe that the best thing we can do is present the most logical argument in history. And if we can present that argument and present it to people, they'll say, my gosh, that is the most logical thing I have ever heard in my life. I am now a libertarian. Well, that's not how anything works, right? That's not, someone can't come up to you and present an argument and expect you to just immediately change your entire belief system based on it. We have to meet people where they are. And so an example of that I did in my campaigning when I was running for the nomination for vice president, I went to college campuses and spoke with college students. And instead of going to them and saying, well, you know, the libertarian idea of self-ownership and non-aggression would fix all of your problems, instead what I did was I asked them questions about what was most important to them. And overwhelmingly what I heard from them were things like student debt, whether they'd be able to get a good job when they got out of college, the cost of health care, they wouldn't be able to afford health care, things like that. These were people in their late teens and early 20s who were already dealing with what appeared to be a midlife crisis. And it was horrifying to see this. But the point of all that is that when I would talk to them about that, then once I actually knew what they were concerned about, then I would say, well, that's very interesting. Let me ask you something. What are you going to school for? And they would tell me, and I would say, and what made you choose that? And more often than not, they would say it was because of whatever their chosen field of work that they wanted to get into. And so I would ask them, I would say, well, let me ask you this. Instead of having to go to school for 4 to 8 years and running up tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt, what if you could do some kind of voluntary apprenticeship or internship and learn how to actually do what it is you want to do under people who are already doing it professionally? And then once you had reached a level of mastery, then you could just do it professionally. Once that trade organization had given you their stamp of approval, you could go off with their blessing and start working. And they all said, that sounds great, but I can't do that. And I'd say, yeah, but why? And they'd say, because I have to go to school. And I'd say, but why? And they'd say, because I have to get a degree. And I'd say, yeah, but why? And then they got it. The reason that they were in the situation they were in was because of the barriers and burdens that had been imposed upon them by a government that was intentionally trying to make it harder for them to thrive. That's the whole point. And every time we did this, every time we went out, whether it was to door knocking tours and housing projects, or going to college campuses, or Zoom calls with people of all different ages and demographics and ethnicities and income levels and everything else, we went to where they are from their precepts, agreed with their concerns, and then we presented them with the libertarian idea. And so the point of that is that there's a process to how we do this. And this works in business, it works in politics, it works in any way that you want to actually reach people where they are. First, you have to listen. And once you listen, two things are happening there. First of all, you are identifying their problems. And they are getting a chance to tell you what it is that they have to say, what their concerns are, what their worries are, what their hopes and dreams are. And they are seeing that you are someone who actually cares and empathizes with them and actually wants to know what it is they're worried about. Then once you do that, you demonstrate that you just heard what they were listening to, what they were just telling you. You demonstrate it by agreeing with their concerns and their fears and their worries and their anxieties and their hopes and their dreams. And explaining to them, because we're libertarians and we often have a very good understanding of why things are the way that they are, explaining to them why those things are that way, how bad centrally planned policies of Republicans and Democrats have gotten us where we are. And then once you have them, once you've demonstrated that you care, that you were listening, and that you know what you're talking about, then you can take them on the journey. Then you can explain how our common sense libertarian solutions are the way forward. And so that is the way forward. And as I said in my speech earlier, this is a grassroots army. This is an election that is going to be won, not just for me and Joe in the White House, but also for all of the various races across the ticket are going to be won on the strength of our grassroots army. It will be you that are out there that are winning hearts and minds and having conversations with your friends and your colleagues and your neighbors and your loved ones in your communities and bringing people into the libertarian message with empathy and with engagement and with a dynamic way of presenting our message. Libertarianism is inherently the most empathetic political message out there. You own yourself, you own your life, you own your body, your labor, and the product of your labor, your property, and we as libertarians will stand beside you and fight against anyone who tries to take your power from you, because you can thrive in better ways than anyone could ever imagine if you were simply allowed to do so. And when we reach people with... Thank you. And when we reach people with that message, after first demonstrating that we care about them and that we're listening to them and that we want what's best for them, that we want to end the wars and bring their loved ones home and allow the healing to begin, that we want to remove the ridiculous occupational licensing laws that make it so hard for them to actually thrive if they aren't already independently wealthy enough to afford the various costs for compliance, that we want to free their loved ones from prisons, the victims of the war on drugs, and remove those felony records so that they can vote again and be able to live a life again and be able to actually start a career and thrive again. When we demonstrate that we actually care about them, we will win their hearts and minds in ways that no one else will ever imagine. And like Jeff was saying, we can win them from the left, we can win them from the right. The Republicans and Democrats and their craven media have no idea what's headed for them. And folks, I'm going to wrap this up because I can see that you're all enjoying your meals. My wife, by the way, would like to thank you for listening to me so that she didn't have to suffer alone. But if any of you have any questions, feel free to come up and ask me. I would love to talk with you. And if any of you watching at home would like to know more, I invite you to go to joe20.com. And we have a contact form. We would love to hear from you. If you like what you heard, we'd love to have you come and join our team and volunteer. And let's go out there and win this thing, guys. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your lunch. Thank you.